most predictions are overconfident, right? So if you're totally naive and some expert says, "Oh, there's a 95% chance that thing X will happen," you probably, knowing nothing else, want to discount that by some by some amount, right? And this gets
Yeah.
complicated. Like, how do you forecast the risk of like a nuclear war occurring
Oh, that
in
leads us
Ukraine,
to
right?
one of our next
Yeah.
topics. Is 538 gonna like lay a line on nuclear war? Like, are there any Trump bets going on? Uh, yeah.
So, I mean, there is, if you are interested in this, there is a post on the Effective Altruism Forum
Hmm.
where they just ask a bunch of like smart people what the chances are and average them out, which on the one hand is not very scientific, but I generally think like making people put like a number on things is usually better than not
Really?
doing it, right? And I think in steps, like what's the step that Putin uses a nuclear weapon in Ukraine, and then different steps of like escalation, and try to figure out what's the chance that like actually London gets hit by a nuclear weapon. I mean, we're kind of so used to like thinking about I don't know, like, but like that's relevant, right? Like there might be a point at which if I thought there was an acute risk, I would not want to be living in the middle of Manhattan where I do, right? I certainly don't think we're at that point now, but like people kind of resist thinking about these things in a specific way, and it just kind of leads to like a lot of fuzzy-headedness, you know.
Oh
If
yeah.
this risk of
Really?
nuclear war becomes tangible, then so this model estimates, or it's not model, it's a group of forecasters estimate the chance of a nuclear strike in London over the next year and a half as being about 1 in 300, um, which to me is terrifyingly high. I assume New York is kind of pretty high compared to London,
I think no
although
way it's
not
that
so high
high.
that yeah, although not so high that I'm going to do anything about it, I guess. But there would be escalatory steps, right? It's not very likely that Putin would just launch a nuke on New York tomorrow, right? But things can get out of control once you have any nuclear weapon used. You also have a higher risk of accidents. So things could happen unintentionally. There have been way more near misses than people realize throughout the Cold War, where there were radar systems that were malfunctioning, and people fortunately had enough common sense to override the protocols. But like the world is probably fairly lucky that we haven't had any nuclear detonations used in warfare or even on accident since World War II. We're probably we faded like a lot of risk there, and I think are maybe naive about kind of the long term risk.
Not even what sense about the long term risk?
I mean, if there's a 1% chance of nuclear weapons use per year, like that is pretty consequential over the time frame of hopefully I'll live another 40 years or something, right? Like that's fairly consequential over the course of my lifespan or any child's lifespan, or that has a pretty big effect as far as diminishment of human potential. Um, Now you can go read what's the likelihood that like a nuclear war would literally wipe out civilization. There are different opinions on that. It probably wouldn't literally kill everybody, right?
Yeah, it's very hard to
But
do that.
like a 1% risk per year, and some people think it's lower, but it's probably higher right now for sure. I think it's got to be higher currently given the situation in Ukraine. Like that's a lot of risk to fade. In the Cuban Missile Crisis, JFK, I think, estimated there was a 30% chance that we would have a nuclear war between Russia and the US, right? Not some one-off strike that might escalate. You'd have like a full-scale war in the northern hemisphere. I mean, that would have been like, it's pretty frightening if you go read the history of this.
Hmm.
No, I mean, I know it seems like a very old-fashioned topic, like nuclear war, right? But like, I think people don't realize how lucky we've been in some ways. That's the
Really?
consensus of like experts that I've talked to.
Oh, what? A couple things. I want to say. Apparently, this I found interesting. There's a YouTube channel that I watch called Real Life Lore. I believe it explained why Putin's hand was kind of forced in invading Ukraine. Like it was actually quite a logical decision for him, but not one he wanted to make. Uh, uh, I don't really understand that very much. I might be even wrong, but I forget why. That's an interesting site for if you were interested, or other viewers. I'm curious why you say we've been very lucky, though.
If you look at the number of near misses where one additional thing had gone wrong and there was some type of intentional or unintentional nuclear use, there are quite a few of those cases, right? So that's one reason why. I mean, the other thing is like we haven't lived with weapons like these for very long, right? What is 1940? For 75 or 80 years or something, right? It's like not really like enough data to be very confident, right? If the risk is 1% per year, you wouldn't necessarily have to adjust from the prior that much, given that we haven't had weapons that can like destroy so much of the world so quickly as we have right now, right? It's different
Mhm.
from like pandemics, right? It's very unlikely that a pandemic that's natural, at least, would wipe out all of civilization because we've lived with like infectious disease for the entire history of humanity, right? And we're
Mhm.
here, and so that we have thousands and thousands of years of history that kind of would be evidence against like
That's a fair
societal
point.
destruction from a
We've
pandemic,
kind of
right?
we've kind
But
of
nuclear weapons we've only had for 70 some years. So if you like this stuff, the book The Precipice by Toby Ord goes through different types of risks. A big one people are concerned about now is risk from artificial intelligence. That's a big rabbit hole that we may or may not want to get into, but that book is very thoughtful about thinking through these existential risks, so called.